Welcome, everybody. I now call to order the regular meeting of the City Council and Successor Agency to the Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority meeting of Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Now we're going to have the national anthem. Tonight we have a video from Yahir Garcia, who was a Newport Harbor High School student in the vocal music program in the class of 2001. When we're done with the video, you can sing along with the national anthem if you wish, but then after that, please remain standing and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance together. So please stand and face the flag.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay, now the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now's the time that we do our moment of solemn expression. And today, we're very pleased to be led in the moment of solemn expression by Pastor David Mann from Calvary Chapel. Pastor Mann, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again for the gathering and meeting and our business. We ask, Lord, that you would continue to pour out your wisdom upon each of the issues and matters that will be spoken of this evening and decisions that will be made. We pray and lift up the fire and rescue team here in Costa Mesa that serve, also the fire department that serve, the entire police department that serve here in the city of Costa Mesa. We ask your presence and your blessing upon each and every one in the office that they hold, the duties that they perform. Bless now this meeting and our time together. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Okay, now, Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds. Here. Councilmember Gameros.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mar. Here. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Harper.
Here.
Mayor Stevens.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Councilmember Harlan is absent.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we're on to the closed session report by City Attorney Kimberly Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no reportable action taken in closed session. However, council members did, pursuant to our transparency and negotiations policy, disclose communications they have had during negotiations with the labor groups identified on our closed session agenda. And pursuant to that policy, I will ask them to identify the people with whom they have spoken out loud right here and now.
I've spoken with Robert Gonzalez.
Hold on one second. Let's make sure you're on. We should be in discussion mode. Let's see.
Got it. Yes, I've had conversations with Robert Gonzalez from CMCEA.
I've had conversations with Jared Corti from CMPOA, Robert Gonzalez from CMCEA, and Tim Steed from OCEA.
I met a few months ago with Robert Gonzalez of the CMCEA.
I've met with Robert Gonzalez from CMCA, Tim Steed from OCA, and Jared Corte from the Costa Mesa Police Officers Association.
I met with police, fire, and the CMCEA and the representatives from there.
Do you have anything, Don? No? Nothing from Councilmember Harper. Okay. So our first presentation was going to be the minor B Orioles, and they won the District 62 Tournament of Champions, but you know how it goes when you're 8 and 9 years old. They're moved on to flag football and soccer and all that stuff, so we couldn't assemble them. But I want to congratulate them. That's a big deal to win the Tournament of Champions, District 62, Costa Mesa Little League. It doesn't happen every year. We're going to make sure that they all get individualized certificates from the city to commemorate how proud we are of their achievement. So that brings us to our second presentation, which is Fire Prevention Week. Fire Prevention Week is October 9th to the 15th. This year represents the 100th anniversary of Fire Protection Week, the nation's longest running public health observation on record. This year's milestone anniversary theme is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. The theme promotes a life-saving message that can mean the difference between life and death in a fire. It is critical to develop a home escape plan with all members of your household and practice your home fire drill at least twice every year. Now we're going to invite to the podium Chief Stefano, who will say a few words, and then we're going to do a proclamation. And I'm going to read a bit from the proclamation, but I just want to recognize all the firefighters and all of our heroes from our fire and rescue department here that are here today. It's just so great to have you here, and you have had the apparatuses out there for the public to see, the Cal OES apparatuses, and our fire department. Chief may cover some of this, but have gone on 11 wildfire calls over the last year, and they last at least 2 weeks. So really, what that means is, for more often than not during the last year, our fire department has been out helping other jurisdictions during the fire season, and I know we have a theme, but I was suggesting earlier that our theme maybe this year should be, instead of fire and rain, fire and no rain. You know, apparently it's going to get worse, and we're very grateful for all the work that you do, not just for us, but for the state of California. Now, I'm going to read, and then we'll give you the floor, Chief. And I'm sure I stole a lot of your thunder, but that's okay. You can repeat it. Okay. So the city of Costa Mesa. This is from the proclamation. The city of Costa Mesa is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our great city. Costa Mesa's professional men and women who serve as firefighters, first responders, EMTs, paramedics, and the community risk reduction experts are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and injuries throughout preparedness, prevention, protection, and education. The professionals of the Costa Mesa Fire and Rescue Department serve the community with respect, integrity, and compassion here in Costa Mesa and statewide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I urge all people of the city of Costa Mesa to plan and practice a home fire escape for Fire Protection Month, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Costa Mesa's fire and emergency services. Chief, you have the floor, and then when you're done with your remarks, we'll take a group photo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. I want to just start off and welcome back our city manager, Lorianne Farrell Harrison. It's great to have her back. Incredible leader for us. So great to see you up there. But Mayor Stevens and members of the council, thank you so much. We've talked about it before. There's not anything that we do in terms of staff or in terms of public safety that is more important than protecting the community. The support that this council has shown to us has been incredible, and we appreciate that. That allows us to have the tools to do our job and to serve the community. So I just want to acknowledge that piece. What I'd like to do right now is bring up, we not only had fire apparatus out before the council meeting, the 3 Cal OES assigned engines that we have, but we also have our newest firefighters, our 8 probationary firefighters. So I'd like them to bring them up right now. If you can all come up, along with our cadre, who is responsible for that, training officer Chuck Torres as well. And I want to acknowledge in the back, we have our Division Chief of Operations, Jason Pyle, Division Chief Fire Marshal John Neal, and Battalion Chief Bill Kershaw, who's currently working an emergency call, I believe, on a phone. But I just want to acknowledge the work that we do as a fire and rescue department doesn't happen as well with each and every department within the city. Everything that we do, from bringing on our new firefighters, from the finance department to our human resources department, there's not a day that goes by that we don't utilize an integrated method to carry out the great work that we do. And every single department that we have is responsible for that. So I want to acknowledge all of our great department directors and staff and team at all levels. But with that, I want to turn over to Captain Chuck Torres, who's responsible for this group of 8 new firefighters that are about to complete their initial academy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Captain Torres.
All right, thank you, Chief. Mayor Stevens, members of the City Council, thank you. Just to give you a kind of update of where we're at, we're in our 6th week of the Fire Academy out of 8. Next week, they'll be finishing up with combo testing, where they go through a bunch of disciplines and we bring it all together, where we have scenarios set up for them to show us what they've learned in the last 7 weeks. And then we finish off with Operator 1A, where they learn how to drive the fire engines so that they can move them around safely and whatnot. So, but I first want to introduce Josh Kalmason to you. And then we have Robert Rondinella. We have Jeff Guzman, Kainoa Korinoff, Chris Cole, Kenji Taniguchi, Carly Geyer, Portia Neal, and then the cadre over here, we have Captain Maldonado, who's in charge of the academy, who's been leading them through all their disciplines and teaching them everything. And then we have engineer Luke Anderson. Go ahead and raise your hand. So then, there you are. And then we have 2 firefighter paramedics, Murillo Torres and Kyle Brosmer. So they're in charge of teaching them, instructing them, and maintaining their safety while they're out there learning all their skills and whatnot. So when they hit the floor, they're ready to go. So thank you very much.
And if I could, thank you, Captain Torres. I also want to acknowledge the great work that's done as a whole. We're coming into Fire Prevention Month. Actually, we're preparing, we've got an open house October 22nd, Saturday, at our Fire Station 4, right across from Estancia High School. It's going to be a great event. We're going to have a number of folks out there from some of the other departments. Police department will be out there. We anticipate their SWAT team, at least a static display to be out there. But that's October 22nd, Fire Station 4, an exciting time. And again, one member of our team that has done a great job for us when it talks about highlighting the important issues that we have with community education, Brenda Emmerich. So I'd like to bring up Brenda Emmerich, who's currently the acting emergency services manager. So she's sharing time between police, fire, and the city, but doing a great job. But I can't acknowledge enough the great work that she continues to do for us. And I wanted to just acknowledge the most important asset that we have are our people. And we're so fortunate to have the best of the best. And again, thank you for the support for that. And with that, we are open for any questions, or if we want to jump right into pictures, we can go there as well. Thank you so much.
Well, since you brought up questions, any questions, council? Are you ready for your close-up? Okay.
just
All right.
one quick thing.
Yes, of course.
I just want to say I made recommendations on haircuts. I said follow mine. Most of you guys did, so thank you for that.
All right, that's great. Let's take a photo.
So we're going to
Okay, so all right, so then our third presentation is a proclamation for 2022 Breast Cancer Awareness Month. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to raise awareness about the terrible toll breast cancer takes on all of us. Breast cancer is the most common cancer diagnosed among women and the second leading cause of death from cancer among women after lung cancer. As a recognized leader in breast cancer research, the American Cancer Society is making strides in efforts to cure breast cancer by uniting individuals, businesses, and communities to end cancer as we know it. With us tonight is American Cancer Society Associate Director of Development, Kristen Grime, and she's going to come up and say a few words. But before she does, and come on up to the podium, and I'm going to read a little bit from this proclamation that we're going to present to Ms. Grime. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to increase public knowledge about the importance of early detection of breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. About 1 in 8 U.S. women will develop invasive breast cancer over the course of their lifetime. More than 2,700 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in men in 2022. During National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we honor the incredible fortitude of breast cancer survivors and offer a heartfelt support and prayers to those currently battling the disease. As a community, remember the precious lives lost to breast cancer and the families forever changed as a result. I urge all Costa Mesa residents to become aware of the impact breast cancer has in our community and join us to honor the survivors and memorialize those who have died of breast cancer. So that's the excerpt of the proclamation. Ms. Grime, you have the floor to say a few words, and then we'll take a photo.
Thank you so much, Mayor Stevens, and to the rest of the council. I really appreciate your support. On the behalf of the American Cancer Society, we are so honored to be hosting our annual Making Strides Against Breast Cancer event right here in the city of Costa Mesa. We've been doing it here for over the last 10 years, and the community here has been a great partner and support to us, so we really appreciate it. We're incredibly excited to be hosting it again coming up on Sunday, October 23rd at Segerstrom. The walk will start around 7 a.m. and we encourage everyone in the city to bring their friends, their families, and their coworkers to support the strides that we are making in the breast cancer space. The American Cancer Society is the largest funder of research outside the U.S. government for all cancers, including breast cancer, but we do so much more outside of that. Research is definitely paving the way for the future, but we need to support the cancer patients who are going through their journey right now. The American Cancer Society provides support through transportation, lodging, 24/7 access to questions and services. So when you know someone who's diagnosed with cancer and they're scrolling Google at 2 o'clock in the morning because they're scared and they don't know what's next for them, there's a real person on the other end of the phone at the American Cancer Society to help support them through that journey. So everything that you're doing, including this proclamation and helping us with our event here, really creates and paves the way for us to be able to support breast cancer patients moving forward. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. All right, then let's take our photo. Okay, for our last presentation, we're very proud and honored to have our neighbor, council member and former mayor Will O'Neill from the city of Newport Beach, but he's here in his capacity as the chair of the San Joaquin Transportation Corridor Agency, sometimes known as toll roads, which, ends, we have kind of the terminus of that right there on Bear Street and Baker. And so we have a representative. I've been on the board before, but now we're ably represented by Councilmember Reynolds, who does a great job. And the way it works is there's a foothill board that takes care of basically the 241, and that's kind of the board that's more controversial. And then we have the San Joaquin board that generally likes the toll roads, and that's the one that Will is the chair of. But he does a wonderful job. It's a big job. It's a big budget. It's a big staff. There's 24 board members in all, if you count both boards. It's like herding cats, and we're very, very honored and lucky and fortunate to have Chair O'Neill from our region as the chair of that important agency. So, Chair O'Neill, with all that buildup, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, thank you very much for inviting me. As the mayor said, I'm a city council member in Newport Beach, the representative from that city on the San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Agency, of which you are a member. So let's talk through what the TCA is doing with Costa Mesa's membership. As a quick overview, the TCA exists because back in the 1980s, the state and federal government did not have the money to do large regional transportation planning. And so back in 1986, through state law, the two JPAs, which is a Joint Powers Authority, were formed. And they were financing the roads using what are called non-recourse toll revenue bonds and development impact fees, which means that the agencies, the cities and the county that were part of these JPAs, their tax base was not at risk and not pledged, which actually meant these bonds were not the credit rating was pretty poor. And so currently today, these are the member agencies. So as the mayor mentioned, there are two agencies, the Foothill Eastern Agency and the San Joaquin Hills Agency. The San Joaquin Hills Agency, we oversee the tolls collected on the 73. The Foothill Eastern is the 133, the 241, and the 261. As the mayor alluded to, if you're probably hearing about the TCA in the news, it's almost certainly talking about the Foothill Eastern Board, which Newport Beach and Costa Mesa are not a part of. The reason for that is because of the expansion down into South Orange County, which does not affect the 73. This is a very large agency. We oversee 420 lane miles every day on the toll roads between the two agencies. We have right around 330,000 daily transactions with over $400 million of annual toll revenue with 2.2 million account holders. I don't think people realize quite how large the TCA has become. This is a big benefit because even if you don't use the TCA, I guarantee you are benefiting by having those cars on those roads instead of on the 405, the 5, or the 55. I mentioned earlier about the financing. What has happened over the years, we finally have gotten to the point where our bond rating our bond ratings have risen to A ratings. That took a long time. But fortunately, over the last few years, we've seen a steady increase. And because of that steady increase and also the low rates, we were able to take advantage, and we have saved over $700 million between the two agencies in interest without extending the maturity dates. The second part of not extending the maturity dates is a big deal. The goal, of course, is to eventually pay off the debt that is owed on these two agencies. One thing I think most people don't realize, TCA does not own those roads. Caltrans owns those roads, but it is toll roads' job to make sure that we are collecting the tolls and paying off the debt that it took to pay or to create these roads in the first place. My goal is to put us in a place where a future board can actually get rid of the agency completely. That will take some time, but we are setting it up so that with that $700 million in interest reduction will come sooner. From a financial policy standpoint, we actually were able to pay, both agencies were able to pay off their unfunded pension liabilities in 2019, and we have maintained that going forward. We've been able to establish cash reserves. Those cash reserves will be able to go into if we need any infrastructure improvements, but certainly toward a future council's ability to pay down the debt. The toll management or the toll policies themselves, they're relatively minor, but they increase tolls about 2 or 3% every year. The idea there is if you do it slowly, you don't have large jumps when you eventually have that need. Orange County, as we know, continues to grow. I suspect a lot of cities right now are trying to figure out how exactly to work with the infrastructure of RENA. We certainly are. I know you are too. But as we continue to see growth, we need to continue to make sure that we are paying attention to regional mobility options, and that certainly includes the TCA. We have actually created a long-term strategic plan last year. It's the first time we've ever done that. What we are looking at, I'm going to skip that. What we're going to look at is these are our goals. This is, as the mayor mentioned, Councilmember Reynolds is Costa Mesa's representative. She helped craft the goals of the agency using these 7 focus areas. I'm going to touch on just 2 of them tonight. One of them is the fiscal management, which we've talked about, and then environmental stewardship as well. So on the fiscal management side, I mentioned earlier, we've allowed for an early debt pay down of $600 million, saving $670, which will continue to increase as we have set aside more reserves to take advantage of our bond ratings. And then I'm going to skip to the next one, which is liquidity. Strong liquidity reserves allows us to continue to increase our credit rating. And because the vast majority of our budget goes toward paying down debt, an increased, better credit rating does allow us to pay down the debt faster without having to do substantial increases on toll rates. This one's important. So this one goes to our riders. So our riders typically are our residents, and I want to make sure that I'm highlighting for everyone listening tonight, and hopefully folks can tell other people about this, the discounts that we offer. So as noted, if you have a prepaid Fast Track account, you're eligible for a monthly frequent driver discount. These are very easy to sign up for. You can sign up online. As I mentioned, we have 2.2 million account holders, and you can sign up for a prepaid account tonight if you'd like to. Drivers who spend $40 in tolls on the toll roads, which again, 73, 133, 241, or the 261, during the statement will receive $1 off every toll in the following statement period. And so that explains how the $40 is calculated. But I want to make sure if for some reason you're wondering if you actually received this, go online to the toll roads website and just look at your bills, and you'll be able to make sure that you understand how these discounts are set up. But I just want to point out again for everybody, these discounts can add up pretty quick, especially if you are a frequent traveler. Environmental stewardship. This is something that probably doesn't get thought of that often by folks who are thinking of the toll roads themselves, but we're actually pretty proud of the environmental stewardship that we've been able to create. So we have quite a bit of conservation land and environmental programs, especially in and around the TCA itself. The toll roads themselves. One thing, by the way, if you're driving on the 241, I would recommend next time you're doing that, look to the right as you're doing so. Occasionally you'll see these what look like platforms. What those are is actually to make sure that if any wildlife ever wander onto the roads themselves, they have an off point. So they can actually jump off. They won't be able to jump on. And so it was actually a pretty interesting strategy and has led to the reduction in loss of animal lives. So one of the things that we've also done over the last 25 years, we actually have over 2,200 acres of native habitat under our stewardship. Over $125 million have gone toward environmental programs. And we are home to multiple species. And if you are a developer, you know these species very well. But we've got quite a few wildlife monitoring and movement studies. We partner regularly with other environmental agencies and also with our local universities to help out. And then TCA continues to be an environmental pioneer on these issues. I mean, this is one of those, we know how much open space, sometimes perhaps we actually forget how much open space there is in Orange County, but TCA continues to be dedicated to maintaining that open space, sometimes as an offset to the construction itself, but making sure that the 2,200 acres of open space that we are responsible for is open to the public and also open to the animals themselves. And then last but not least, this is an example on the left-hand side of a wildlife crossing that makes sure that animals can cross under the roads themselves and make sure they don't want to cross over them. But if for some reason they are, I mentioned earlier, all of those black lines, those are under crossings. But next time you're driving on the 241, just take a look. You'll see those platforms, and you'll notice that that's actually designed to save lives of animals. So with that, again, I wanted to say thank you on behalf of the San Joaquin Hills Board for Costa Mesa's continued partnership. I wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Reynolds for her continued leadership on the board. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will bid you adieu.
Council, any questions? Anything?
Awesome.
No? Good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up for Councilmember Chairman O'Neill. We don't have to take a photo with him. That's all right. All right. Anyway, so now we're on to public comment. This is kind of a great night because we only have one item on our agenda, so you could talk about pretty much anything that you want to talk about, including consent calendar items, except for that one agenda item. So that's the way we're going to do it. We've got 3 minutes per person. At 1 minute, it'll cut off. Sorry, you'll hear a ding at 1 minute, and then after that, your mic will cut off. We're going to start with people in the room. They're going to get a chance to talk, and then we're going to go to the folks on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you wish to speak, press *9. When it's your turn to speak, do *6. It will call your name when it's your turn to speak. So let's start with Ms. Martin. You have the floor.
Tomorrow is Walk to School Day. Woohoo! And tomorrow, 6 elementary schools will be meeting and with staff from Costa Mesa City Hall, as well as volunteers from the Active Transportation Committee. And then on the 12th of October, 5 other elementary schools will be participating. At the beginning of the year, a subcommittee to the Active Transportation Committee called the Safe Routes to School presented suggested routes to school and recommendations. The recommendations included adding LPIs to intersections, identifying infrastructure improvements, outreach to site levels such as PTAs, ASB, and principals, and designate routes to school for middle and high school by June of next year. This was a PowerPoint presentation that the Safe Routes to School did, and they actually walked all of these routes. David Martinez, Jim Erickson, Kirk Bauermeister, and Rick Huffman, they walked all of the suggested routes and made very specific recommendations. I presented this to the school board, Newport Mesa Unified School District School Board, at their June meeting, and asked that they start the process to update their Safe Routes to School, which was about 12 years old in June. I called the school district office and was sent to a message machine. I wanted information about how the school district had implemented or updated their Safe Routes to School. I walked to College Park School. The principal wasn't there, but staff was under the impression that Safe Routes to School was the city's responsibility, not the school district. I am requesting that city staff work with Newport Mesa Unified School District directly and pronto to make our kids safer when they walk to school. I walked to this building, a 10-minute walk, about half an hour ago, and I watched a driver race through the intersection of Fairview and Fair running a red light.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Toller. You have a presentation? Okay, let's wait. Is it till it's up? It's up?
What's up? Good
You have
evening.
the floor, Commissioner.
Okay. Tomorrow is Walk to School Day. I got this in my inbox. I didn't write it. CMABs didn't write it, but I think it's great language. On Wednesday, parents, children, school staff, and our police officers will come together to promote the promise of healthier, happier students, quieter, cleaner, and safer streets, and more connected neighborhoods. A subsequent email continued with lofty promises that we should all get behind. Everybody in this room, despite differences on other topics, kids being able to move about safely in their neighborhoods is something that we could all be on the same page on. The question that I want us to continually be thinking of and sitting with is whether those goals are worth the cost if the cost is some driver convenience. That's something that's always going to be a trade-off that we have to think about. Before I get into the problems, I want to acknowledge that this council and this staff over the last few years have done more than anybody in the history of the city towards these goals of making our streets, our public spaces safer and more comfortable for everybody of all ages and abilities. But we have some problems that I just want to keep bringing up to the surface because there's always more work to do. I'm going to focus on the schools that my kids go to, Kaiser and Woodland. This is on the east side. We have drivers are often reckless and disrespect the crossing guards. I'm going to keep my stories to myself, but I encourage you when crossing guards aren't busy to go and talk to them because they do have a lot of stories that they see every day. Drop-off and pickup lines block the car lanes and the bike lanes regularly. These three arrows, it's a daily occurrence leading to situations like this where kids are forced to squeeze between cars that are parked and moving, doors flying open, people pulling in and out. Obviously, these parents in line are on their phones, let's be honest. Crosswalks, whether they're unmarked or marked, we have this problem. This is on Esther, and this thing gets knocked down several times a year. This is a very problematic crosswalk. I'm not going to get into the rules of the road, but people are supposed to stop for both unmarked and marked crosswalks. Bike lanes disappear, whether they literally disappear because we have parking instead of bike lanes in front of schools, as the red line shows. Also, when there's work, often kids are left without any safe way of getting around the work. The strong town principle that I think all of us agree on is what are people trying to do now and what can we do today to make that a little bit easier? So this is outside one of my kids' school. Obviously, people are trying to bike. This doesn't show the kids' bikes on the inside of the school. Walk to School Day is obviously very popular in the east side. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have these tools.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good job. Yes, you have the floor.
Hi, my name's Wendy Samo, and I'm back again about the gym at 140 East 17th Street. So I'm just going to pull up a few things from their CUP. It's going to be 92-07. So in this, it talks about how future, they might be concerned about the gym. And then it says, staff is requesting the conditions restrict the number of people attending the health club at one time to the maximum of 60, and the prohibition of group aerobics classes be added to the conditions of approval. They did that because the gym is an old, sawmill. It doesn't have very much insulation. It releases base like it's no problem. I'm pretty sure they keep the front door open because it creates so much vibration, they have to let some of it out. But last Saturday, about 8:30 in the morning, you could hear the instructor, and then boom, all of a sudden it stopped. Monday, it didn't make very much noise either. Tuesday, I was thanking the planning commission for whoever fixed it. And by Wednesday evening, they had the door wide open where you could hear the workout and music, and I got videos of it. They have been submitted to everybody. But my whole purpose of being here is you guys are the only ones that can declare this gym a public nuisance and fine the gym for waking us up at 5 a.m. You know, today is the first day that I can remember in 2 years that I actually got to sleep into my alarm clock, okay? I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. And then I'd also like to bring up the conditional use permit for 2019 for the gym. Okay, it's gonna say on there. So in the original CUP, there's no hours listed, no hours for the gym. But on this 2019 one, they said that the juice bar, because they wanted to open a juice bar, was going to be from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. No, it's from 6 a.m. It says the hours of operation will be consistent with the current gym hours, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. So if they don't open until 6 a.m., why have they been waking us up this whole time is a number one question. You know, this is the only hours I can find on any CUP. But if you guys could declare it a public nuisance, that'd be awesome, and then we can start finding them. I forgot to say that whenever I woke up Saturday morning at 7:30, I called the police, and they told me that I was to call the gym and ask them to please be quiet. So I can't even call the police to report it now. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Mr. Humphrey, you have the floor.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Jay Humphrey, Costa Mesa resident. Two things. First, in the city website, you specify that Measure K will require developers pay fees for different things, open space, traffic, and what have you, specifically. All those things are already required by law and have been. In fact, you guys have an ad hoc committee that specifically deals with one of those issues, transportation. So traffic fees. So therefore, it is not, whether it says it in the initiative or not, your Measure K, it doesn't matter because it is already required. Secondarily, the housing stock in Costa Mesa is 43,532. And if you look at that, if you look at that, the state requires below market pricing of 4,713. And if you're only using a inclusive housing ordinance to achieve the required amount of the state housing, you have to figure out what they've been doing in other cities and what have you. You make those choices. If you in fact use the highest number that's pretty much out there, 15%, you wind up by coming up with 31,420 new housing units required to meet your housing, your RINA number, specifically by using only an inclusionary housing ordinance. And I misspoke last council session, as Ms. Smar pointed out. I said 33,000. I'm sorry, it is only 31,420 units, which is still a 70% increase in the existing housing stock in Costa Mesa. So we're talking about a huge number. Unless you guys start looking for imaginative ways to get there, you're not going to get there with Measure K. You are going to redevelop high density stuff inside the industrial and the commercial area, but the housing issue will still require that many more if you're going to use only an inclusionary housing ordinance as per your motion.
Can you hold on 1 second, please? We didn't start his time.
I'm done.
So you're done?
I'm done, so we're good. Okay. I just want to make sure we covered it. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the little extra time I got.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Let's, I guess, because we're going to go back and forth. So let's go to Ms. Lees.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Costa Mesa City Council. My name is Wendy Lees. I served on the City Council for 8 years. And I am voting no on Measure K. Because in thinking about this, the measure is flawed because of transparency. or the lack of transparency. And as one who worked to collect signatures and then worked to get Measure Y passed, I think that your putting this measure forward is disrespectful to those of us and to the 70% of Costa Mesa voters who approve Measure Y, because we want a say in future development. We are a built-out city. And the second point is that you had this ad hoc committee. Well, if you recall, a previous council decided that ad hoc committee would be a good idea, but it wasn't such a hot idea when they decided behind closed doors, not in public, no minutes, no agenda, no public comment, that they would lay off our dear public employees. Well, that was in 2011, and the employees sued the city, and they did work it out. It took about 4 years and a lot of money, several $100,000. It didn't go well. It was a very disruptive time. So in principle, your having an ad hoc committee causes a lot of questions and doubt that why would you do that? And it wasn't necessary. And then that night that you voted on it, there was a lot of confusion, and it's a very complicated matter. And so I'm here to say that it's wrong to have ad hoc committees. It blew up a few years ago and cost the city a lot of money, and I'm voting no on Measure K. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm waiting for my presentation.
Okay.
Go back a slide, please. There we go. So I'm continuing my comments from September, since the update of our housing element will end up being the equivalent of a full general plan update process. Must engage the public in that process. What follows is much like what Santa Ana did. What you see here is the cover of the textbook for urban planning in California by two esteemed authors. It is the textbook used in many graduate programs. These are excerpts. A proposed general plan or general plan revision usually doesn't leap forward into public hearings fully formed. In most cities, the process begins with two steps: the creation of an advisory task force, often known as the General Plan Advisory Committee, and the selection of an outside plan consultant. Some cities precede the creation of the task force with a visioning process in which the city and community leaders gather public input in an attempt to reach a consensus about what sort of things they want for the city. Sometimes the advisory task force undertakes the visioning process. An advisory committee is usually made up of 15 to 30 citizens who represent various neighborhoods, industries, and other cities in other interests in the city. Over a period of months or even a few years, the consultant or lead staff person will work with the Citizens Committee to put together a draft of the general plan. In most instances, the professional general plan team will provide the committee with technical background and make recommendations, while the committee will make the initial policy choices. The rise of citizen power has changed the general plan process considerably, making it longer, more expensive, in some ways more cumbersome, in other ways more democratic. In many cities, city managers and council members resist broad public participation. They believe an elite group of decision makers will make the most informed choices and prevent the process from getting bogged down. These city managers and council members say visioning and consensus building is unrealistic. Leaders in many other cities recognize that organized citizen groups cannot be ignored and welcome their participation. The state's general plan guidelines contain a chapter emphasizing the importance of public participation. To help avoid future conflicts, the guidelines strongly recommend early, frequent, and broad participation. What are the state's general plan guidelines? Well, they start with a community vision. All these guidelines somehow involve community visioning. And here's the process the state recommends, starting with a visioning process. The housing element update did not include a visioning process. You need to initiate a visioning process before you take any more steps towards planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Ben Chapman. I am a resident here in Costa Mesa, and I'm also the chairman of the Greater Costa Mesa Republicans organization. I'm here just to say that politics in Costa Mesa have been toxic for many years. whether you want to blame the Mensheimer regime or the Cat Stevens regime. Regardless, I'm here to speak on Measure K, which will be on the ballot for residents here in Costa Mesa this November's election. Today, we're seeing Republicans, Democrats, and independents coming together, putting partisan politics aside, so the residents of Costa Mesa, when you get your fancy flyers, your texts, your phone calls for the measure for yes on K, know that it's totally funded by developers, not your fellow Costa Mesa neighbors. This measure takes away not only the input, but denies the residents any type of appeal. I'm proud to stand alongside Democrats and independents, registered voters, on this nonpartisan issue. Please vote no on Measure K. And for Costa Mesa Mayor, I'm asking you to please vote for former State Senator John Morlock. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. And okay, the slide's up. Thank you. The housing element proposes a major change in zoning throughout the commercial industrial areas of the city. It is really a general plan update in disguise. Much has been made about planning for affordable housing to satisfy the RHNA numbers required by the state. This table, Table B1, contains the percentages of affordable units if you do some simple math by adding up very low in the low income column and dividing it by the totals. The totals at the bottom reveals there will be 29% affordable units out of a total of 17,245 proposed units. Doing the math for all the areas listed above shows a broad range of assumptions for affordability, such as 15% for Sakioka and Home Ranch, up to nearly 30% for the West Side, and 40% at Fairview Developmental Center. I'm going to go to the next slide. Take Table B6, which goes for 16 pages, lists every parcel that is proposed for a zoning change in the housing element. As an example, let's look at the second one on the first page. This is 2 acres and the location of the Smart and Final store on West 19th Street. The proposed residential density is 50 units per acre for a total of 99 units with 28 affordable units. The current West Side overlay allows for 20 units per acre with 3 stories and rooftop decks. An example of 50 units per acre is the Costa Mesa Motor Inn at Harbor and Wilson, which is 5 stories wrapped around a parking structure. This is one of over 90 parcels, some large, some small, to be rezoned for housing as dense as 90 units per acre. Measure K will eliminate voter approval for all of these changes and promises revitalization. I'm not sure transforming Costa Mesa without a comprehensive general plan update is something we expected from this council. We are headed for high density. If we are, then you need to be much more transparent with the public to gain their support. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
In 2016, the residents of Costa Mesa passed Measure Y by a 70-30 margin. It added Article 22 to the Costa Mesa Municipal Code called an ordinance to give the people of Costa Mesa control of their future. It provided an exemption for affordable housing required under state law. Now, I have not found any evidence on the public record that the State Department of Housing and Community Development was made aware of this exemption in all of our hand-wringing over the limitations imposed by Measure Y. Was it? If not, why not? And the issue is, if the housing was required by state law, then it would be exempt, and Measure K would be superfluous. If the housing is not required by state law, then HCD doesn't have a leg to stand on, and we have nothing to fear from Sacramento. So that's a false villain. Next, when the council voted to put Measure K on the ballot, you all talked about how proud you were of yourself. If you're so proud of yourself, why don't you own it? The measure could really have been called a measure to exempt commercial corridors from the requirement of a vote of the people. That would have been simple, it would have been neutral. But you put this obscure title on it, misleading, you have obscure language, you reference an obscure section of the municipal code, when really the only operative language of Measure K is to eliminate the residents' right to vote on development on those mapped corridors. If you're so proud of it, why didn't you say it? It's not even in the ballot summary provided by your city attorney, which is shameful. The thing is, if you're that proud, why didn't you just say, hey, folks, how about you give up your right to vote on future development? If you were honest and you were that proud of what you were doing, that's what you would have said. Or are you not proud of the ordinance you collected and created, or are you proud of your ability and your cleverness at trying to put something over on the people of Costa Mesa? And for that, you should be ashamed. Thank you. Vote no on K.
Commissioner Russell, you have the floor.
Hello. Yes, I'm speaking as a housing advocate tonight. Costa Mesa is a dynamic, thriving city, and we need to plan for its future. This is a future that includes transit and housing for some of the thousands of people who come to work in Costa Mesa and go home to another city. It includes the people that grew up here and want to stay. Measure K does not take your right away to vote on projects. Not one project proposal has come before Costa Mesa voters in 6 years. By contrast, our neighboring cities have seen projects including housing, mixed use, retail, proposed and considered by their residents during the standard public review process. As a result, these cities have benefited from new homes, restaurants, parks, and bike paths. Development funds public safety, street improvements, and parks. By stifling any new development in Costa Mesa, our present policy has prevented residents from offering any opinions about what development they'd like to see happening in the city. Measure Y has effectively disenfranchised the residents. There's no projects, no public input. And yes, I am an advocate for affordable housing. We need to build it, and Measure Y functionally prohibits it. However, we need housing for everyone. The median home price in Costa Mesa is $1.2 million. This is out of reach for the vast majority of our teachers, nurses, firefighters, working professionals, and young families. The starter house no longer exists. It's likely your kids can't afford to buy or rent a house here. Why not provide the same housing opportunities you had? 22 years ago, I was able to buy my townhouse, and I made a decent income. By the time I retired 2 years ago, I had received some raises, but even with that, I would not have been able to purchase my home. Now, I could be satisfied and say, I got mine, or I can look at the people who grew up here, work here, and want to live in Costa Mesa and ask, how can I help them attain what I have? We owe it to the generations coming behind us to plan and work for a Costa Mesa that has a place for them. Vote yes on Measure K and help them plan for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last week, we had Ms. Parker from Costa Mesa for Everyone, which should actually change its name for Costa Mesa for Everyone who is willing to give up their vote on high-density development. And your planning commissioner that just spoke, Ms. Russell, is a founding member of that group, which is sort of upsetting that she has so much power on the planning commission and has made her way so outspoken. And she has some power behind it. Parker failed to mention that her PAC is 100% funded by developers. She said they were in it to win it, but she should have said that they were in it to win it for legacy and for Rose Equities, because they're the ones that donated $30,000. No on Measure K is a grassroots group. We are scrambling for money for volunteers. We do everything ourselves. We don't have paid people that are out putting your signs up. We've talked to hundreds of people, and we know what they want, and they feel betrayed by what's happening with Measure K. Our goal for no on K is to truthfully interpret the 1,080-word tome that makes up Measure K and try to stop the power grab by the developers, because this is all about money. And you can look at donations that are coming up for the mayor's race. Mr. Stevens has a war chest of, and I think by now, in excess of $115,000. This is a city of 112 people, so 112,000 people, so that's for every man, woman, child, and their dog, $1. Now, what's wrong with that? There's just something basically wrong with that. Our city isn't for sale. Our vote isn't for sale. This is our city, our voice, our vote. No on K. And if you think K is reasonable and you should vote no, then you should give a hard look at the candidates that wrote it, voted on it, and are running on your ballot.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, we have a presentation.
I just want to thank the No on K campaign for being a little boring and rambly and inarticulate, because my goal is to be interesting, fun, and factual. And I want to talk about why I support Measure K. And my name is Mark Fuchsovich, for anyone who wonders who I am. What is Measure K? It's a ballot measure just for the city of Costa Mesa that lets the city plan its own housing future instead of Sacramento. So why do I support Measure K? Number one is Measure K will actually help solve traffic. I talked about this at the last council meeting. 80,000 people drive into work today, every day in Costa Mesa. These are 80,000 non-Costa Mesa residents. So these are people who live in other cities outside of Costa Mesa. It could be Huntington Beach, but it also could be places like Riverside and San Bernardino. Costa Mesa has this a little bit sad imbalance because we're an economic center full of jobs and prosperity where people want to live, people want to recreate, people want to go drink. Everyone wants to be in Costa Mesa, but the affordable homes are in Riverside, San Bernardino, and Temecula. I actually know someone from a different job I have, believe it or not, who lives in Fallbrook, California, a city I didn't know of until too long ago. It's actually that little red pin on the map. And he drives into Costa Mesa right by the IKEA every day, 5 days a week, for a scientific manufacturing job. And he lives in Fallbrook, California. Number two, Measure K is going to help us fund our schools and our parks with no new taxes. And this is going to be tax money raised from properties that are coming up. We've had stagnating property taxes for schools and our parks, and we can't be doing that to our kids, and we can't be doing that to our open spaces. Number three, K is the first step to stabilizing rapidly rising rents. I'm not here to tell you that K is going to reduce your rent tomorrow. I'm not going to do that. But it is an important first step to stabilizing what is a housing crisis we have in California, and we need that. Measure K, number four, Measure K keeps my favorite people in Costa Mesa. So those guys who work at Taco Mesa, especially the one who always calls me Marco, that guy needs Measure K to afford to live in Costa Mesa. My favorite baristas at my favorite coffee shop like Moongo and Neat, they need Measure K to afford to live in Costa Mesa. The tellers at my bank who always smile when I'm grumpy, they need Measure K to live in Costa Mesa. These people deserve a reasonably priced place to live. All of them should be able to live in the great city of Costa Mesa. So this November, beat traffic, pollution, climate change, and unhappy commutes by voting yes on Measure K. Fund our schools and parks by voting yes on Measure K. Make Costa Mesa affordable again. This used to be the affordable Costa Mesa city in Orange County by voting yes on Measure K. Let's make a Costa Mesa for everyone, like is on my sign right here. So vote like your rent depends on it. Vote like Costa Mesa depends on it. Vote yes on Measure K. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we're done for people. Oh, we got one more person. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to speak, come on up.
Sorry,
Yes,
Mayor.
sir. You have
I
the floor.
apologize. Good evening, Mayor Stevens and City Council members. I wanted to put a name and face to a developer who is backing Costa Mesa for everyone. Yes on Measure K-PAC. My name is Tim O'Brien. I'm with Legacy Partners. You may recall that I participated in many workshops and the public hearings in favor of this measure. So it only stands to reason that when a community-based PAC was formed to support Measure K, that I would contribute contribute to it in a material way, and that's exactly what I did. As many of you know, I developed the 580 Anton residential community in North Costa Mesa, and I'd like to develop more high-quality communities like it in this town. 580 Anton represents the single proudest accomplishment in my career. First, because it's a gorgeous community. You should go by it if you haven't seen it. And secondly, because it's located in the town that I was born and raised. The project took nearly 15 years to bring to fruition and simply would not have happened if Measure Y existed at that time, period. Today, 580 is the home to 500 proud Costa Mesa residents, many of who work and shop in the town. The project actually replaced a tired old shopping center, which, by the way, was in better shape than many of the buildings along Newport Boulevard and Harbor Boulevard that Measure K is designed to improve. Since Measure K is passed, it's stifled all sorts of housing opportunities, including affordable housing, senior communities, and both rental and ownership housing for young adults and families. Think about this. The young adults that are looking for housing opportunities today were just getting their driver's licenses when Measure Y was adopted. In a handful of years, these same young adults are going to be looking for housing on where they'll raise their families. And today, Costa Mesa has so much to offer them except housing. My parents have lived in Costa Mesa since 1958. They raised a family here and have been blessed with 16 grandchildren. And only 3 of those grandchildren live in Costa Mesa today. These 3 will soon be looking for opportunities to stay and raise their family. I hope 2 of them are mine. If we can provide them and others like them the opportunity to do so, and that's why I support the Measure K PAC and support Measure K. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're done inside the chambers. What about on Zoom?
Yes, the first speaker is Kathy Esfahani, please.
Ms. Esfahani, you have the floor.
Hello, I'd like to speak in favor of Measure K. I support Measure K because the existing ordinance requiring a citywide vote for any major change in land use is hurting the people of Costa Mesa. It's hurting low-income families, middle-class families, seniors, young people. The pain cuts across our community. I'm sure everyone listening tonight knows our city has an affordable housing crisis. There are many ways to illustrate that crisis, but I'll just give you one set of statistics. 60% of Costa Mesa residents are renters. Nearly half of Costa Mesa renters are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing, more than what is considered safe. Costa Mesa's lack of affordable housing means many low-income families double up in apartments or live in garages. Senior citizens scrimp on food or their medications in order to pay rising rents. And young adults who grew up in Costa Mesa can't afford to live here except in their parents' homes. We need to build new affordable housing to address this crisis. But the existing citywide vote requirement for any development over 40 units that requires a zoning change has stopped all development in its tracks. I'm sorry, but Sandy Guinness is simply wrong when she says that the exception for affordable housing required by federal or state law allows affordable housing projects to go forward. I'm a retired lawyer who specialized in appellate law. Take it from me, that supposed exception is too vague for any nonprofit developer to rely on. That's why no affordable housing is getting built in Costa Mesa, despite an overwhelming need. I'm sure you are also aware that the state is requiring Costa Mesa in its housing element to plan for over 4,700 new units of affordable housing for low and very low income households. The only way we can get there is by planning for increased density in parts of the city where that density makes sense. Measure K has wisely identified those places as north of the 405 or near South Coast Plaza or along the city's major business corridors, Harbor Boulevard and Newport Boulevard, and at Fairview Developmental Center. Of course, allowing that needed density will require changes to our city's land use plans, but the existing ordinance mandating a citywide vote on any major change in land use is a huge barrier to accomplishing the land use changes we need. In California, it's an anomaly to require a citywide vote on every major land use change. Land use planning is a fundamental role of government. Please allow our city government to function as it should. Pass Measure K so that we can have the affordable housing that our city needs for the future and for its people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jen Tanaka, please. And we have a presentation. And so, Ms. Tanaka, if you can let us know when to go to next slide, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, council and staff. My name is Jen Tanaka, and I'm a board member for the Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets. As my colleagues Russell and Flo mentioned, tomorrow is Walk to School Day for most Newport Mesa schools. That we even need such an event is a little sad, because shouldn't every day be Walk to School Day? It's a testament to how uncomfortable it's become to do this really normal thing. But thankfully, through our advocacy work, we have actually been seeing a really big uptick in parents and kids exploring active transportation as an alternative to long car pickup lines. So now we have this amazing opportunity to continue making our streets better. And a great way to do that would be to take one route and make a truly safe route to school, which could be an example to other cities, because nothing is more important than the safety of our kids. Next slide, please. And I can't see the slides, so I hope you can see them.
Yeah, we can see 'em.
Okay. Oh, there it is. One route I think would be a great candidate is the route shared by Woodland and Kaiser Elementary and East Side. Here you have a suggested route to school for Kaiser. And on the next slide, please, you have the suggested route.
Can you hold on for a quick second? We didn't
Yeah.
start her time, so let's start her at 2:30 or something. Can we start her at 2:30 or not? Okay, you're gonna hear a beep, and then you'll have 30 seconds. We'll start you now. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. So on the next slide, you'll have the suggested route for Woodland. And as you can see, there's overlap here. They're almost exactly the same routes. And on the next slide, if you squint, you can see that these routes actually haven't been touched since February 2010, which means that they're definitely due for an update. Next slide. One idea would be to make this route intentionally educational. The children using this route have never had driver's ed. This has been pointed out before. So adding more signage than normal, both wayfinding signs, such as the ones that are on the left and the right here. Skip to the next slide. These kinds of wayfinding signs would be great. And there we go. And as well as stop signs that are specific to bicycles, for example, would really turn this route into more of like a teaching route that didn't assume that you knew how to drive a car. Next slide, please. I'd also strongly recommend looking at infrastructure geared towards all ages and abilities. Low barriers, such as the ones pictured here for bicycle lanes, help keep kids in so they don't accidentally stray into traffic. And daylighting intersections by removing parallel parking near street crossings can make it a lot easier for cars to see children who are trying to cross. And we should definitely support parents arranging walking school buses or bicycle trains, because it's just so much more fun and easy to ride with friends. And finally, on the next slide, I would strongly recommend extending the campus past the school boundary line and making our school zones unmistakable. When you think about when you drive onto a college campus, like UC Irvine, or into the even into a mall like the parking lot at Fashion Island, you're immediately aware that you're in a place dominated by pedestrians rather than fast-moving cars. And the same feeling could be accomplished just in our school zones with a little more attention to detail. Adding raised crosswalks and reducing speed limits in school zones, even if it's just limited to school hours, would dramatically improve comfort for those streets. And using pavement treatments, maybe even signage themed in the school colors and narrower streets, we could visually extend the school environment as if the street itself were part of campus. not only would this be really fun for kids, I think drivers would pick up on those cues and behave accordingly. These are not big or expensive changes, but
okay.
they can make a big difference. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next on Zoom.
Erin Cox, please.
You have the floor.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I just wanted to make a public comment of appreciation. I'm a UCI student, and I just wanted to say that living here is really expensive. My rent is really high, but at the very least, I can afford to live here. Anyways, I just wanted to thank you for Measure K. I hope it passes, but I'm just happy that you guys are doing something about how hard it is to afford to live here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Henny Abraham, please.
Ms. Abraham.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to take a moment, and as many of you know, I'm Iranian, and I am extremely disappointed that with the events that's been happening for the past 2 weeks, I have yet to see any of my council members or my city acknowledge the horrific events that's happening. I have some amazing women sitting on that city council, and not a single one had said anything about the horrific things that are happening to the women of Iran. The owner of our lab and camp, Mr. Sadeghi, is Iranian. So we have a lot of investment of the Iranian community in Costa Mesa. And let me be very frank with you, it's extremely disheartening to the Iranian community that no one has spoken up about the brutality that's happening. That's all I had to say. Hope you guys have a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment then and go to council comments. This is the time when the council can do their committee reports, comments, and suggestions. We're going to start out with the council member from District 5, Arliss Reynolds.
Thank you. Henny, if you're still on, I'd be happy to talk with you and work with you on that issue. I have good friends who are Persian and been talking to them personally. It's a very serious issue, and I'd be happy to work with you on that in the city. Other comments. So we've heard quite a bit of good discussion about housing and challenges of housing in this city. You know, it's been really interesting to reflect on challenges created by some of the things we love about Costa Mesa, right? This is a very diverse city. That's one of the things that makes Costa Mesa great. We have people who, on my street, we have a woman who, has lived here her whole life. She bought her home for $7,000 in 1954. On the same street, there are people buying their homes for $1.5 million. These are the same homes, right? It's a very interesting challenge in the city. What I know 100% is that every person who rents that I talk to is struggling. We saw some numbers today about the number of owner-occupied units and rental-occupied units. Almost 2/3 of residents in Costa Mesa rent, and those people are struggling, and the problem's only been getting worse. So just want to share, there's a number of different solutions that we've been working on as a council. It's certainly forefront in our minds as a council. If you don't have a stable home, it's very hard to do anything else. So this is a really important issue that we're focused on. We have created rental assistance programs, and I'll ask our staff to continue to push out information on the rental assistance programs. I'm curious also if we can get a report back, maybe not tonight, but in a few days, just about how much funds are left in those programs and how those programs are being utilized. But this is rental assistance for residents of our city who are struggling with rent issues. We have programs specifically for families. There are resources for veterans. There are resources for seniors, resources for anyone who needs that help. So please do look to the city website for that information. Also on the housing front, there's been quite a few bills coming down from the state in the last week or so, and I'm really interested in understanding how those impact Costa Mesa. So if we can get some information on that. I think you've gotten these questions, staff, but if not tonight, maybe at our next council meeting, really understanding how those state bills affect what we can do in Costa Mesa and what control we have or won't have on some of those issues. But again, to those listening who are struggling with housing, who didn't have the benefit of families who moved here when housing was affordable, we are working hard to address that issue. My other favorite topic, of course, is walk bike safety. Thank you to all of the residents who brought up Walk to School Day. There are many kids in our community who walk to school every day. This is a day to encourage those who don't to get on out there. Our bike walk committee is working very hard on these issues. We've got a great team on our staff working on these issues. And there's new growing collaboration that I'm really excited about between our city staff, our community members, of course, and the school board. There are several school board members who are really focused on this issue. There were a couple meetings last week about that collaboration. I was really excited to hear that our school district is developing an MOU with one of our walk bike safety organizations so that PTAs can readily bring walk bike safety education to their campuses. And I'm interested in us investing in that for our Costa Mesa schools. Just another note, another topic that comes up quite a bit is e-bike safety. There is collaboration among our city staff, our school officials, our police departments about how the heck do we address the safety issue as more and more kids get on powerful e-bikes. And we've had some really good discussions about what are effective ways to address this challenge. I heard in a meeting that I was not a part of, I heard that some of the Costa Mesa staffers were really pushing education, and I want to thank you for that. I think that's a really important issue. We've got a lot of kids on bikes who've never even taken driver's ed. So, understanding the rules of the road is a really important and good first step we should be taking. Just want a note on cannabis. I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Mar for bringing up cannabis at our last meeting. I'm really interested in the discussion of potentially capping the number of cannabis applications that we accept. And I think I wanted to mention, two more things. Through a number of different conversations in the last couple weeks, I've heard some really positive response about our maintenance team and especially our graffiti response team. People are astounded about how quickly our graffiti response team removes graffiti. And so I just wanted to, I heard that from multiple different places within the span of a few days. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank them, encourage our residents to use the Costa Mesa app to report things like overflowing trash cans, graffiti, just maintenance issues. We have a really good system for responding to those. So please do use that app and please thank our maintenance team within the Public Works Department. And then lastly, so I represent the West Side. There's a lot of really interesting businesses over on the West Side. There's a really interesting history of our West Side industrial community. Anytime I need something made, t-shirts printed, I've used some of our local printers. And there's this saying within that business community that if it's not made in Costa Mesa, it's not made. And I'm starting, as I get to know more of our Costa Mesa businesses, I'm starting to realize, like, wow, like this is really true. We do everything in Costa Mesa. I've had the chance in the last couple weeks to visit Clayval, Railmakers, Blinn & Young, Rolls, Marine Canvas. These are businesses that have been in Costa Mesa more than 50 years. They're owned by Costa Mesans. They employ many Costa Mesa residents. Just a couple notes. So Clayval, a big organization in Costa Mesa, they vertically integrated company that make valves, global industry. They've got businesses across the world. They do everything there from like mixing the molten metal. You can go actually see metal getting poured. But they're working on some of the most cutting edge technology that's used by our military, for example. They showed me some of the equipment that they were building for the Navy that's going to improve refueling efficiency, but I think it was 30% or so. So really fascinating to have that business based in Costa Mesa. Another example, Railmakers is part of our original boatyard industry. Some really old tools that are very functional, that give them the agility to respond to really interesting requests. They were saying after the hurricane that went through Fort Myers and all of the damaged boats, they're probably one of the only shops that's going to be able to provide some of the parts that those boats need to be repaired. So if it's not made in Costa Mesa, it's not made. It was really exciting to go on that tour, and I'm really looking forward to the part of our economic development plan that explores and how we can support those businesses on the west side. Thank you.
All right, thank you. District 4, Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Big shout out to the students from Mesa High School today here at our meeting. Hope you're enjoying yourselves, or at least finding it interesting. Glad you're all here today. First of all, I want to thank our fire department for having their meet and greet outside for the council meeting. We had our 8 recruits out there for them to meet the community. And we had 3 Cal OES engines that go out when we respond to fire catastrophes. This goes to show that even in Costa Mesa, we're not being directly impacted by fires. We're still part of that solution. So shout out to them. Thank you for them for being part of the community and doing all they can to support us. 2 quick comments for staff. I had the pleasure of speaking with residents on Surf Street near Meyer. I heard a lot of folks happy about the street calming measures, but there was some concern on the roundabout on Surf Street. I had 2 different residents tell me that they don't even know they need to go around. They just turn left, and that they feel more unsafe because they're not aware of the rules. So I know we're supposed to be looking at those calming measures. Maybe that's one area to focus on. But other than that, I will say folks are very pleased of how it actually worked in slowing down traffic. And that is something I want to see doing more often in more streets, particularly in West Costa Mesa, as a lot of our smaller streets like Anaheim and Pomona and Wallace become pass-through streets for bigger arterials. And finally, I do want to encourage everyone in my district, District 4, to attend the Walk to School event tomorrow. We'll be meeting at 7:35 at Someone Cares Soup Kitchen, and that'll be for both Pomona School and Ray Elementary School. It's one great way to encourage and showcase how many of our students actually walk to school. But more importantly, it's a show for the community to see why it's important for us to be investing in safer infrastructure for our students. I know in my district, a lot of folks bike to school. A lot of folks walk to school. They do so because they don't have access to cars. Their parents work early. Everything we can do to make sure that those students' paths are safer is better. And that includes speed calming measures, that includes better bike paths, and that includes just more awareness. So thanks to all who organized it, and thanks all for today's meeting.
Thank you. Now from District 2, Councilmember Lauren Camaros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of quick things I want to talk about. The first one is I do want to thank the Fire Chief Stefano for taking over for a while. You did an excellent job, and we were well represented. I also want to commend him on his new recruits. They look like they're outstanding individuals. I think they're going to serve our community well. And seeing what you had out for equipment today, it was clean, but it was also well used, and that was very apparent from the tree scratches and stuff like that. So glad to see we're putting our equipment to good use. The second thing I want to talk about is traffic around our schools, especially in the morning. I know a lot of people are in a hurry trying to get their kids dropped off, picked up. Maybe they're driving through because they're trying to get to work themselves. But you need to stop and think for a minute that these are our children. These are your children. The last thing you would ever want to do is get in an accident where the pedestrian was a child. That would ruin the rest of your life, not to mention the family that was involved and that young child's life. So I would just like to remind everyone in the school zones, please slow down. I live near a school. It's like a raceway by my house in the morning. Literally, people are on the throttle, not on the brakes, and that's not how it should be. So just be aware, slow down around our schools, please. We're trying to get our children to school so we can get to work just like you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next up from District 1 is Councilmember Don Harper.
First, congratulations to the new fire cadets. Chief Stefano. And I agree, Chief Stefano did a good job. He didn't talk very much. I like that. He shortened things down. We still didn't get out of here before 9. I was hoping for that. Anyway, welcome back, Lorianne. Nice to see you. And thanks for everybody's comment tonight and all the PowerPoint presentations. Agree with some of you, don't agree with others, but I'm not going to debate it up here. I appreciate the comments. We're here to listen, and I do. And if anybody wants to reach out to me directly that disagrees with me, I'm happy to chat with them and listen. So, but I do give Jen Tanaka the the prize for the best PowerPoint, and I don't know if she finished it or not. I suggest she send it to all the council members. I'd like to make sure I see the whole thing. So I do appreciate the time all of you spent trying to make your points. And last thing, Mesa Tennis Center RFP. I have not seen it, Mr. Minter. I want to see it. I want to help you guys do a great job. I know I've had a lot of questions about where it's at, and I talked to Ms. Farrell Harrison today about it. So continue to want to really do a really good job for the Mesa Tennis Center. So happy to help. That's all I got to say on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem Andrea Marr from District 3.
Good evening, everyone. How many of you are here for school credit tonight? Raise your hand. All right, so democracy in action. I'm not going to ask how you're going to vote or how your family's going to vote on K, but you've kind of heard both sides. For those who are not aware, as a sitting city council member, and given that the city put something on the ballot, I can't advocate for that measure. So if you don't hear me responding to some of those comments, I can educate, I can help you understand what's on the ballot, but I'm not in a position, given the hat that I'm wearing, to sort of push for one thing or the other. So it's not that I don't care. I really, really have some strong feelings and want to respond to many of these things, but I'm going to restrain myself. Congrats to the Historical Society on the reopening of the Diego Sepulveda Adobe. That was really exciting this weekend. Barbara Stuck and a number of other folks on the Costa Mesa Historical Society have worked really hard with staff and others to restore that building. More than 200 years old. I learned a lot about burrowing squirrels that apparently were like coming up into the building and destroying it. So glad to see that. That's one of the Costa Mesa treasures. So I'm glad to see that back open. I don't think we've met since the State of the City event. The mayor did a very good job at the State of the City. It's also available on YouTube. So if you weren't able to attend, you can watch the State of the City. There were so many good things that the mayor listed that we couldn't actually cover all of them, and he had to kind of rush through at the end. But I would encourage you to watch that if you have some time on your hands. A couple of folks have reached out after my comments on cannabis from the previous meeting. I'm concerned about just the number that are in the queue and the number that we're looking at permitting. I'd like to take another crack at that ordinance. I think we've learned a lot over the last couple of years. So thank you, Councilmember Reynolds, for recognizing that. I think the other concern that I've heard from a number of folks that was not top of mind for me until recently was just that some of the businesses that shops are going into are being displaced in a way that I don't feel comfortable with. So I'd like to see us bring back options there. But I know planning is busy. The last thing I want to make a point of saying, looking through my notes. I just want to make sure we close the meeting in honor of retired Lieutenant Jerry Helderman. He was with the police department for 24 years and really an institution around here. And we should close the meeting in honor of him. I also know his family's invited community members to attend the memorial. So certainly reach out if you're interested in doing that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So thanks for all the comments, the public comments. It's wonderful to have the students here. The State of the City was really enjoyable, and thank you very much to all the staff members who helped me with that. It definitely takes a village to get me up there to make that speech. Tony Dodero in particular that helped me with the text, Hadassah Jakur, who put together 55 images that I was going to show to that crowd, whether they wanted me to or not. And then Janet Hauser, who was great because she kept me on task and let me know when I should wrap it up. So that's good. But it was fun to see everybody there. And thank you also to the Chamber of Commerce, who did a great job, and all of the honorees. So I had just today had occasion to interact with a guy who I think is a very unsung hero in the city. He's a code enforcement officer, Mike Brumbaugh. I don't know if you know, but he basically wakes up the city of Costa Mesa. He starts working at 4 a.m. for us, and I guess he probably gets off early, but in any event, he works very hard to address the very difficult issues of people who are on the street struggling with homelessness and gets them the help that they need. Works with our community policing unit where necessary, and I just wanted to give him some recognition. So thank you, Mike, for what you do. ACMA is opening up. They've already kind of done some of their openings and their gala and all that, and you might, if you go and look at the South Coast Metro area, you'll see those big lights that shine in the air to lure you to ACMA. It officially opens on Saturday. It's a 24-hour opening, so whatever you're doing on Saturday, take some time to go over there. It is going to be a spectacular addition to our city and our arts community. We are the city of the arts for generations to come, and for the first 10 years, students get this, for the first 10 years, general admission to ACMA is free, so you can go there. Everybody can enjoy the art at the Orange County Museum of Art in Costa Mesa. So anyway, there was a lot of discussion about Measure K and housing and stuff, and I read an article in the LA Times. I want to share this with you. I don't really do this that much, but it really spoke to me. This is, if you want to look it up yourself, it's from the LA Times, September 30th, 2022. And it said, among other things, this is a long article. I'll just read some excerpts. And this particularly pertains to our visitors, I think, our students. Young adults in California experience mental health challenges at an alarming rate, with more than 3/4 reporting anxiety in the last year, more than half reporting depression, 31% experiencing suicidal thinking, and 16% self-harm, according to the results of surveys commissioned by the California Endowment. This is the important part about our discussion regarding Measure K. The poll reveals that a generation under strain from a wide range of problems, with 86% saying the cost of housing was an extremely or very serious problem. More than 3/4 saying the same about the cost of college, lack of well-paying jobs, homelessness, drug and alcohol abuse, and the cost of availability of health care. Mental health ranked just behind the cost of housing as a widespread problem for young adults, with 82% calling mental health an extremely or very serious problem. So we have young adults who are coming out of the pandemic. They've had issues, and now we see the issues with their future and what their hopes and dreams are, and they are listing as the number one, 86% of those are listing as their number one concern, the cost of housing. So when people ask what we do here and people question our motives, think about that for a second. I'm privileged, as I said before. I'm going to be 60 years old. I bought my first house in 1991, before any of those kids that were polled were born. I'm okay, but I've got 4 kids. They're not okay. They can't afford to live in Costa Mesa. Think of that about them when they're voting. And when the people come up and they talk, think about whether they are more like me or more like my kids. On Sunday, September 25th, retired Lieutenant Jerry Helderman lost his battle with cancer. Retired Lieutenant Jerry Helderman was a 24-year veteran of the Costa Mesa Police Department. The Costa Mesa Police Department and all of us at the city of Costa Mesa will remember retired Lieutenant Helderman for his quick wit, his passion for law enforcement as a profession. He contributed significantly to the overall success of the Costa Mesa Police Department and to its recognition as a leading police agency, especially in the last few years. when he helped us build back our numbers in the police department to a point where they're at now, which is better than it was since the Great Recession. Our deepest sympathies go out to Jerry and his family and the Costa Mesa Police Department. He was only 50 years old. Tonight we adjourn the meeting in the memory of retired Lieutenant Jerry Helderman. So, moving on to the city manager report. Ms. Farrell Harrison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Good evening, everyone. Just really glad to be back. Very happy to see everyone this evening. And I wanted to thank everyone for just the enormous show of support, of love, compassion for me as I dealt with the severe injury to my foot, to my ankle. And just wanted to say thank you for the outpouring of messages and encouragement. It was a tough time to be away from work and to be isolated. Sometimes in our lives, we go through a challenge that really shows us the struggles that other people face. And for me, this was a real eye-opener in terms of the challenges that many people in the disabled community face in terms of just mobility, pain management, feeling isolated, lack of access to facilities, and a healthcare system that quite honestly is very disjointed and very difficult to navigate. And I found that as someone who's relatively educated, informed, in government, is involved in regulations, and those were all very difficult things to navigate during that time. So I just wanted to thank all of you for your support of me during that time. Really wanted to thank the staff that stepped up. We have a very strong leadership team, and departments, managers, line staff, and everybody just completely pitched in the city manager's office. Obviously, Chief Stefano is part of our disaster council, and whenever there's a disaster, whether it's one that we didn't expect like this, it's a medical emergency or anything that's man-made or a natural disaster, we have a succession plan, and we put that in place, and Chief Stefano rose to the occasion just spectacularly. I was very confident in him in that role, and I know that, and the feedback that you've given me is just how well he functioned and just the incredible support that he gave to the whole team and to the community and, of course, to you. And so thank you, Chief Stefano, for stepping up. And thank you to Chief Pyle for actually helping to run the fire department during that time. I also wanted to thank Alma Reyes of the city manager's office because she took on additional responsibilities as well and did a spectacular job. They both kept me in the loop and kept me involved, and all of our department heads. Everybody had to rise to the challenge. And so thank you to all of you. And again, thank you to the members of the community that reached out and sent well wishes. It meant a lot to me. So thank you so much for that. And I'm so happy to be back and to be walking a little hobbly, but I'm back on my feet. So I'm really happy about that. So I had just a couple of updates on some things that should be really exciting moving forward. One is the local hazard mitigation plan. And while it sounds like it's something that's not that exciting, this actually is a very important plan for a city as we go through Hurricane Ian and we look at the devastation in Fort Myers in Florida, and we look around the world at what's happening with different storms and different natural events and disasters that are quite extreme. The local hazard mitigation plan is the method that a city uses to start really planning in depth for those events and working with the federal government to make sure that we would have the resources in place to respond to those events. If you've been watching the news, you can see the devastation that's happened because of Hurricane Ian in the Caribbean, but also throughout our country on the eastern border, the seaboard, and it's pretty devastating. And so this is a very important part of what we do in terms of emergency management. And we're looking for public comments. So if you'd please go to our website, under Hot Topics, you'll find the local hazard mitigation plan. Please fill out our survey. It closes on October 20th, and we would love to hear from you. On Saturday, October 15th, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., we'll partner with Caltrans, State Senator Dave Min, and then Assemblymember Cotty Petrie-Norris to host a Clean California Dump Day event. Caltrans staff will be there as well to collect household items that are too big for residential trash bins. And so think like bulky item pickup, couches, mattresses, things of that nature, bulky household items that are just too large to stick into the bins, please come to the Costa Mesa Senior Center parking lot at 695 West 19th Street. But please be aware, no hazardous waste or e-waste or other items will be accepted. But if you have bulky items, which our crews pick up lots of bulky items from our alleys and other areas throughout the city, please avail yourself of the dump day, Saturday, October 15th. This month, we're also celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs through October 15th. This year's theme is Unidos, Inclusivity for a Stronger Nation. And to celebrate this special month, we're highlighting some of our wonderful employees with diverse Latino backgrounds that help make City Hall unido. So check out these tributes on our social media. And then on October 20th, remember that it's International Shakeout Day. That's when millions of people worldwide will participate in earthquake drills at work, school, or even at home at 10:20 a.m. local time. So the Great Shakeout is every year on 10/20, October 20th at 10:20 a.m. And we always participate at City Hall. And so we're looking forward to doing that. It's just a good time to practice how to drop, cover, and hold. That's what you do when there's an earthquake. You do not run outside. Many people that perish during an earthquake actually perish because they leave the safety of their home. They don't take cover and are harmed by debris, falling debris from buildings, trees, downed power lines, et cetera. And so if you'd like to check with us on how your business can participate in Great Shakeout Day, please let us know. But that's October 20th. And then I wanted to share our Economic and Development Services Department is one of the busiest in the city. They're tasked with the regional housing element update, the retail cannabis implementation, and they serve thousands of customers at our public counters. They are involved in a very exciting land management system implementation that will hopefully go live next year, that will modernize how we do business in terms of our development plans and code enforcement, inspections, electronic plant checks will be available to you, and many other great amenities. And so they've worked very hard to fill some of the vacancies in their department. They've actually filled 15 positions, including planners, the building safety plan checkers, a senior building inspector, an assistant director, Scott Drapkin, which you've met, and a building official. So congratulations to HR and to Jennifer Lee and her team for bringing on 15 more people. And so we have greater strength in this department, and we're really excited about the work that they're doing as well. And then lastly, I share in all the comments that were made regarding our condolences to the police department for the loss of Lieutenant Jerry Helderman. And I'm grateful that I got to know Jerry personally and his family over the last couple of years, and I'm very saddened by his loss. I made it a habit of calling Lieutenant Helderman every couple of weeks or so just to pray with him on the phone and to keep him as inspired as he could be and, fighting. And his service will be planned for Wednesday, October 12th at 11 a.m. It would be a great show of support for his family. If you could join us, the service will be held at Harvest Christian Fellowship in Riverside at 11 a.m. with a graveside service to follow at Riverside National Cemetery. And so if you could join us in bidding farewell to one of the most extraordinary members of the Costa Mesa Police Department that has almost a quarter-century experience and dedication to the community, we would very much appreciate that. He was taken from us way too soon, and may he rest in peace. And again, if you'd like that information, please feel free to call our office, and we are happy to provide that to you. But it would be great to have a good show of support for Lieutenant Helderman and his family and the police department that serves us so well. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Well done. So now the city attorney report, Ms. Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to make it brief. First, I want to address the comments of a speaker regarding the language in our current code as to the exemption from Measure Y for affordable housing required by state or federal law. I know one of the other speakers, who's now a retired lawyer, I think, spoke to it. I just want to say that really, that phrase has no meaning whatever. It's not defined in our current law, There is currently nothing, no project, nothing, no law in the federal government or of the state of California that requires affordable housing to be built anywhere. The one potential exception that may give that meaning is a new bill, AB 2011, which, along with SB 6, creates some interesting exemptions from both CEQA and from local government zoning. We are still looking at these bills. For example, AB 2011 is more than 20 pages, very dense, lots of uncertainty about what it really means. But I was asked about whether and how those bills might affect the language of Measure K, and I'm evaluating that. But I can tell you this much. Both of those bills apply to sites that are no more than 20 acres in size, whereas Measure K talks about large corridors and planning and so on. So what AB 2011 and SB 6 will do is potentially allow as of right development of individual parcels or cumulative parcels that aggregate less than 20 acres with certain requirements. For example, under AB 2011, both CEQA exemption and as of right development apply to 100% affordable housing projects, which is, great, right? So again, that may now give that previously meaningless exemption some meaning. However, it also applies to mixed income projects that are in commercial corridors. There's lots of intricate details in the bill about what parcels might or might not qualify. For example, single-family zoned vacant parcels would not qualify for those under AB 2011. SB 6 is a separate bill that also provides for as-of-right development. SB 6 does not require any affordable housing component for those projects. However, they at least are not CEQA exempt. So one of the impacts or potential issues is if Measure K were to pass and the council then could begin that visioning process that is included within Measure K, then you'd be able to look at the entire area and create an area-wide vision for the areas that are covered by Measure K that hopefully would prevent individual people from coming in and doing individual projects that might create, what other people might not like and what people might not like in the community. So those are just some of the things about AB 2011 and SB 6. I expect to have a more detailed report to provide to you before your next council meeting. But it's changing every day. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Now I understand it perfectly. Okay, so let's see. Let's go on to from that to the routine, the consent calendar. So with the consent calendar, ladies and gentlemen, these are items that are routine. They're voted on all at once unless somebody pulls them from the agenda. They can be pulled by the public. They can be pulled by the council. They can be pulled by staff. I have to recuse myself from number 3, the warrant resolution, due to a campaign contribution that I got. So, does anything need to be pulled?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, then let's entertain a motion.
Approve consent calendar.
Okay, there you go. Councilmember Chavez.
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Mar. Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, that was easy. So now we're moving on to our one and only item today. So students, you got off super easy tonight. It's our new business item. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Yes, this is scope of work for an agreement between the state of California and the city of Costa Mesa, providing for $3.5 million in state funds to the city for community outreach and land use planning efforts for the Fairview Developmental Center site. Presentation by Ms. Lee.
Ms. Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you is the scope of work for an agreement between the state and the city of Costa Mesa, providing for $3.5 million in state funds for land planning efforts for the Fairview Developmental Center site. As you know, the Fairview Developmental Center site is a 100-plus acre property owned by the state and located off of Harbor Boulevard in Costa Mesa. The site was previously operated as a facility operated by the state, serving developmentally disabled persons, but is now largely vacant. In June of this year, the state approved Government Code Section 14670.31, which outlines the disposition process for the Fairview Development Center site, including collaboration with the city and a financial allocation to fund land planning efforts. The agreement before you this evening is between the city and the state, and it stipulates that the state will provide for $3.5 million for outreach and land planning efforts that are a city-led effort. Site planning would include community outreach, as well as the development of concept plans and framework, technical reports and studies, and ultimately would result in a specific plan and environmental impact report that would be considered by the City Council at noticed public hearings. The agreement is a 3-year agreement, and the city would be required to report quarterly as to any expenditures and progress in implementing the agreement. Should the council approve the agreement this evening, staff would mobilize and prepare a request for proposals and release that RFP so that we can retain an expert consultant to assist city staff in moving forward with the planning process. With that, the staff recommendation this evening is to approve the scope of work and related exhibits for the agreement. Also to authorize the city manager and the city clerk to execute any and all documents necessary for that agreement, and then to authorize revenue and expense appropriations in the amount of $3.5 million. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem.
Do we envision bringing the RFP back to council?
Following normal procedures, the RFP does not come back to council, but based on dollar amounts and the guidelines that the city has adopted, I anticipate that the contract would come before the council for approval.
Okay. Nevertheless, now is the time to provide any input that we might have floating around in our brains about what might be in the RFP.
I'm happy to take feedback. We'll be developing the RFP pending the council's decision tonight.
Okay, I have a few things. It's not technically a question, but I'm just going to perhaps try to phrase them in the form of a question so I can get them out there. Obviously, community outreach, a robust community engagement. I love the fact that robust somehow made it into the scope of work. I'm sorry Councilmember Harlan isn't here to hear us say robust a couple more times. Not limited to meetings, town halls, design, charrettes, and presentations. I'm not sure if we have a percentage of the $3.5 million dedicated to that, but I would certainly hope as part of the expert consultant's scope of work that was a huge component, because whatever happens at FDC obviously really impacts most of the rest of the city. I mean, it's technically in my district after redistricting, but I know Councilmember Reynolds is, interested very, very much in how it impacts the west side as well as Mesa Verde. Didn't quite get that in the form of a question, but you know what I meant. I think the other thing is this question of collaboration between agencies, nonprofits. My understanding as FDC has sort of progressed to this point is that it is unlikely that there's going to be a single developer that goes it alone, or a single property owner with one vision. That part of embarking on this process is that collaboration between folks who may play various roles in what happens with FDC. We've talked about a combination of both housing types and use types and open space, and also this idea, because there's so little entry and exit into Fairview Developmental Center, to the extent that we can have some commercial properties on site such that we're not creating artificial traffic by people who have to go out and then go to the corner of Harbor and Adams and then come back and then go back into the property. I think we were calling that trip capture for a little while, so that we were maintaining that circulation on site. I also think this is an opportunity to some extent, create the most walkable, bikeable, planned community that we possibly could. It's essentially a greenfield site right now. So this is our time to put all of those concepts to the test. To what extent can we really create a community that is able to be without a car as much as possible? If we plan it right, that is absolutely the place where that could happen. And so I'm really excited as part of this next step, to what extent we can include in the RFP those kinds of priorities, such that we're hiring a consultant that knows what the heck I'm talking about when I say trip capture. And then the last piece is the staff report refers to a housing component. If I remember correctly, there was also a commitment to open space and some amount of permanent supportive housing units. So that's not specified in here, but I imagine it'll be specified in the RFP. Is that right? I got a question in there.
The agreement itself does not specify either permanent supportive housing or open space. That would be something that would be left to the city to determine and outlining ultimately through the outreach and land planning process. But the agreement with the state does not specifically include that. There is wording that says that housing, affordable housing, and permanent supportive housing should be a priority, but that's the extent of the wording in the agreement between the state and the city. The rest is left to the city to determine.
Oh, interesting, including the code section that's referenced. There's no, in the trailer bill that didn't call out the open space component or the permanent housing, supportive housing component?
The agreement largely parrots the phrases from the legislation, and it was intended to do that. I'll double check, but I think the phrases were left broad.
Okay, yeah, we should figure that out, because I know that was part of the negotiations with the state to even get this far, was committing to certain components. And I know I've been wandering the neighborhood saying that it's some amount of permanent supportive housing, a minimum housing threshold, and open space is a priority. So if I'm...
Mr. Mayor, I can speak to a little bit of that. There is a priority for housing for former residents who are developmentally disabled, and they certainly, as Ms. Lee pointed out, have specified in both the legislation and in the agreement that the priority for zoning on this site is housing and permanent supportive housing. And so that is the intent of what we will be developing through the RFP and through the CEQA and planning process.
Okay. And then I think from asking the city manager earlier today, we don't have an update from Cal OES on the component that would potentially be reserved by Cal OES, but I'd love to know that sooner rather than later. And I think it most likely impacts our planning process. We can't plan for land that we may not be able to use, so we should probably. I don't know. Maybe I'm behind. Do you know if there's an answer to that? If we know more from Cal OES, or if we have any indication of where, how much land, et cetera?
No, I don't. We haven't think we have an indication of that yet, but we'll be working with Cal OES and the state agencies for more information as we move forward.
Okay, good. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for entertaining my ramblings/questions.
Do that anytime you want. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, staff, for a succinct presentation. The staff report mentions that the council has identified mixed-use income housing units. Has the state basically said that they're okay with that?
Yes, the scope of the agreement doesn't get into specifically what the city would plan for on the Fairview Development Center site in the future, only those statements about housing and affordable housing and permanent supportive housing having priority in the planning process. Otherwise, the city can determine land planning decisions.
Okay. Do we have we earmarked these mixed income housing units for any groups in particular, or any?
No, we have not yet.
Okay. So is there a way for us to maybe prioritize, lower income folks or veterans or folks that live in the city?
I think that's something we could do as we identify what components ultimately that we want to see a plan for on this property. We're not quite there yet in terms of where we are in the process. I think that'll be part of the next steps.
Okay. I just want to echo Mayor Pro Tem Lamar's comments and making questions to encourage, certain ideas. So one more thing I have to ask is it possible for us to make this site be a truly work, play, live model where we have a lot of walkability included in the property?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. And then finally, I just want more background because I know a lot of residents have been concerned about lack of community input recently. When will we have like a timeline of these town halls and community meetings to relieve them of that stress?
Sure. The first step after this evening is to retain an expert consultant and get them on board to do some of the heavy lifting related to technical studies and all the information that we need to develop in order to move forward. But shortly after we retain that consultant, we'll be mobilizing internally to start setting community out and a community engagement schedule and specific events. So we're not quite there yet, but I imagine we'll be there very soon as part of the next steps.
Okay. Well, I'm very excited about this. I do want to have the public input. This is going to be a really good property that was going to potentially change. I know my entire lifetime that property has been vacant necessarily. It hasn't really been utilized much. And it is one of the last few places where we can really build a more walkable, bikeable part of town. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds.
Thank you. I have some questions about scope of the RFP. So I'll share things I hope will be in it, and I'll let you respond as to whether you have any concerns about including those things. That's my question framing. Okay. So some of this will be repetitive. I guess I'm sort of adding support to things I hope to see. Of course, traffic and cars is a concern of a lot of our residents. So absolutely strategies to kind of design the space in a way that even reduces traffic and create some car-free zones. Is something I'm interested in, and I'm wondering if the scope could be, we could make sure that we're including not just the site, but sort of pathways to and from the site, right? So right across from FDC, we have grocery stores, but that crossing might not be safe. I think it'd be really important to be considering those sort of adjacent spaces and how people move on and off the site in any planning. I'm hoping that we, related to that we can be thinking about the opportunity to really create some more east-west connections across the city. We've got, one very narrow bike trail, but this is a really interesting piece of land that could help sort of the movement between Placentia and Harbor. So again, sort of this idea of being a little bit broader than just the specific site. I'm hoping that the RFP would include, a review of the needs we identify through our open space master plan. I know we're kind of finishing up the updates to that now, but there's some sort of specific needs there related to recreational facilities that folks have been interested in that we know we have a deficit of. And then I hope that we would be have a team that has really good experience in some sustainability strategies, so we can really minimize any resource impacts. Thinking in particular, water capture and reuse opportunities, in addition of again to the car capture concepts. Does all that sound consistent with what we're shaping for our RFP?
It does.
It does. Okay, good. Thank you. I think I folded everything into that one question. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Harper.
Ms. Lee, I want to make sure I'm not confused by some of the council members' comments. Their comments and questions are kind of further down the line about a process that's going to occur, right? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. And you're just this is just money to go out and start a process of which everyone here will have input and members of the community will have input. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So what do you do with $3.5 million? No one's ever given me $3.5 million. What do you do with all that money? Is it staff? Is it the consulting agreement? Why is it $3.5 million, not 10 or 2 or 1? Can you help me understand that?
Sure. Normally, in a land planning process of this magnitude, the primary expenditures are related to staff and expert consultants, both to prepare planning documents, a specific plan in this case for that site, and also technical studies and infrastructure studies, for example, that are necessary to do good land planning.
Is the EIR included in that cost?
Yes,
That's correct.
yes.
Okay, so that's a big.
That's correct as well. That's a big component. Community outreach and eligible expenditures in this particular case is both consultant assistance as well as staff time. So that will be the bulk of the $3.5 million.
Great. And how much of that is going to be internal staff we're going to have to hire? Any idea?
We're still putting those numbers together, but we are looking at both consultant assistant needs as well as staff team needs. I don't anticipate necessarily permanent staff members. A lot of times how we would approach this type of project is either through contract staff or consultant staff that are specifically focused on this effort.
Okay. And this will likely come back to council in some form in 6 months or 8 months, or what's the time frame roughly?
Any consultant contracts would come back to council depending on per the policies that are already adopted by the city for contracts. So that would come before the council for a decision at that point.
Well, congratulations on getting this done, and that's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions. So let's hear from the public. Let's open it up for a public hearing or public comment.
Again, the state decided not only to close FDC, but its sister facility in Northern California. In order to determine the best reuse of the Sonora Developmental Center, the County of Sonora formed a 15-member planning advisory team. Over 3 years, that team worked with experts and the community to form a vision statement and guiding principles that would enable the county to arrive at a mixed-use community adjacent to Glen Ellen and Eldridge. Research, education, innovative ventures, and commercial businesses that attract workers. The community has a variety of housing, including affordable, workforce, mid-income, market rate housing, senior housing, housing for people with developmental disabilities. There are also new, but adaptively reused buildings. The natural habitat of the oak woodlands and natural grasses was preserved, and links to regional parks and open space systems were made. The residents enjoy pedestrian and bike access to local services. What was once Sonoma's biggest employer was reinvigorated as a regional model for sustainable development. This was all possible because of the vision of that 15-member team. What do we have here? When I see the words robust, community engagement, and design charrettes, I know we're getting the same BS outreach this city for years has tried to pass off on the residents. Then we go down to the end of the bullet points, and we see the final step will be to hire a consultant to form a local vision. A consultant from where? Riverside? You don't need a consultant to form a local vision when you have plenty of residents who know the city better than any consultant, and they know what they want. But what is interesting is this final step isn't mentioned in the scope of work. Why is that? Because we aren't doing visioning? Ms. Marr is concerned with collaboration with other agencies and nonprofits, but what about the residents? Then we look at the timeline and we see a long period of community engagement, but starting shortly thereafter are the development of alternatives. You're developing plan alternatives and the draft specific plan before the public engagement is even halfway done. If you recall from my presentation earlier this evening, the process described here is completely backwards to what the state recommends. The visioning must come first. What I see here is serious disconnect. City Hall doesn't care about engaging in a dialogue with the public about planning. You're trying to string us along because you think we're all idiots and you're the elites who shouldn't be making all the decisions. Get rid of your arrogant attitudes. This is unacceptable. It's an insult to the residents. It gives lip service to the community engagement. You must change the process. Then we can.
That's it. No microphone, no microphone. So does anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir, you have the floor. Oh, sorry.
Good evening, City Council. I don't agree with a lot of the previous speaker. What I do when I echo and what I do when I agree with is that I think it's really important to get this process right. So some of you may know I'm the director of state policy for a group called Streets for All, is my day job really, and so we've been looking right now at transit across some really mega projects as a whole. One of the biggest things that you see with transit projects, and the reason they go over budget so much, there's a number of reasons. There's been a few reports on it that recently came out that list like 14 different reasons, but one of the big ones is really a lack of community buy-in at the start of the project. What that does is it causes issues on top of issues on top of issues on top of issues. And we can actually see this most recently with the Orange County streetcar, a project that I'm generally supportive of. I don't really love streetcars, but I'm generally supportive of. And you see that Santa Ana Active Streets, like the advocacy organization for Santa Ana, had a meeting about why the streetcar is bad. That shows that OCTA did awful community engagement and really didn't have community buy-in. And so I don't really have a specific point I'm trying to make besides that getting the citizens involved, really making sure you get this right is really going to be important for Costa Mesa for procedural reasons, but also just to make sure the community feels like they're cared about. And I think that's the part I do agree with Ms. McDonald, is that I don't know if a 15-panel member committee is right, but doing something to make sure that everyone feels like they were a part of this, feels like that the outcome was collaborative, even if it wasn't perfect, I think is an incredibly important aspect of this that I want to echo and reiterate. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else in the chambers that wishes to speak. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll close public comment. And okay, do we already have motions? Is that from last time, or are you guys? You guys are still the quickest on the draw. All right, Councilmember Chavez, what's your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. I'd like to approve staff recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
He seconds it. Okay, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes. This is exciting. This is state-owned property that has been vacant for a long time. I'm excited to see what the RFP comes back with. I'm excited to hear the community's input, and I'm excited to see us vision for the future. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge the comments about visioning and engagement. I think the way I read this, and I think I caught most of your comments, Ms. McDonald, but I want to make sure I understand, so feel free to grab me after this. The way I'm reading the community engagement component is that it parallels all of the work that's happening. So as we have a specific plan, community engagement is still going such that we can receive comments and feedback on the specific plan. When we get to, public review, the EIR, we're still engaging the community. I feel like where we've gone wrong is where we've said, hey, we're just going to do this thing up front, and then we're going to go away, plan for a year and a half, and then poof, we come back and it's done. So I think that was what this was intended to communicate, was that's not the goal. The goal is to maintain this level of communication and engagement with the community. I do like the idea of having some, you're shaking your head, so I guess I got that wrong, but we can talk about it afterwards. I do like the idea of having some kind of a group of citizens that are engaged. I think that's kind of where Councilmember Reynolds and I have started, just in, I know, our own thoughts about what could go there. To Councilmember Harper's point, if I learned anything in 4 years, it's that if you have thoughts and ideas about what should happen, it doesn't do much good if it stays in my head, right? No one knows where I'm coming from unless I vocalize those things and I say this is what I'm thinking. And so, that was some of the questioning, is not that we're doing the planning right here for what's going to go to in Fairview Developmental Center right tonight. But the goal is that if I say those things out loud, then you all can tell me I'm crazy, or you like the idea, or we should work on X, Y, and Z. And I feel like that has generally helped me as a council member better engage when people know like what the heck I'm noodling on. So the goal wasn't to single-handedly write the RFP from up here. I think that was all I wanted to say. So I think we'll come back. We'll see this in a couple of months after we've got a proposal out there, but we've hopefully given you enough. And I think this is a really important step. To be clear, what we're voting on tonight is accepting $3.5 million from the state, so all of this can start. The community engagement, the visioning, doesn't happen without the funding and the staff time and the resources, and yes, a consultant to pull all of that together. And so we need to start that process. We need to accept these funds. And I'm happy where we are at, but we have a lot more work to do. So you look like you wanted to talk.
Just one clarification I wanted to make. We did check the legislation, and there is a statement about a legislative intent for 200 permanent supportive housing units. So I correct myself on that point.
Thank you. I knew I wasn't crazy. Okay. Well, good. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds.
Thank you. I had two things, but I can only remember one now. Remembered. Okay. So first of all, I don't know if we've acknowledged enough yet, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that we're very lucky and very happy to be in this position where we, Costa Mesa, are leading this effort. A few years ago, I think when we first got on council, or 4 years ago, we were asking, well, what's the future of FDC? This is state-owned property. We were just trying to get to the table. So I want to acknowledge the work of our staff and our council and the collaboration with the state to get $3.5 million to lead this effort that is going to have a big, can have a big positive impact on our community. So thank you to everyone who was involved in that work. We're lucky and happy to be in the driving seat here. The discussions about community engagement and planning and visioning, I think there's agreement here in terms of wanting to create spend a good chunk of that money, right, to do the outreach, to develop a vision that there's buy-in on. And I would say the day starts today to just start sharing your ideas of what could be at FDC. To be clear, we will have that more formal discussion about what is the actual community engagement work when you come back with a contract for us for that consultant we hire. So we're starting those discussions now. I think the intent is clear. The details of how that, what are the specific tactics for community engagement and schedule and processes will be outlined in, I guess, different consultants' bids. Is that fair, Ms. Lee? Yes. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
Nobody? Okay, yeah, so now I agree with Councilmember Reynolds that it's great that we're in this position of kind of self-determining this and getting this money and kind of knowing that the state of California is putting the OES site there, which I think is going to be helpful for the community in the region. We haven't always been in this place, just to remind everybody. I mean, I remember in 2018, I was at a meeting at the senior center with 600 residents, and they were upset because our state senator, John Morlock at the time, and Sean Nelson, who was a county supervisor, wanted to use Fairview Development Center as a regional emergency homeless shelter. And the community was pretty upset about that. So now we're in this place where we're looking at the ideas of housing and housing for permanent supportive housing, but permanent housing. So I think that's really good. I would say, though, in addition to these items that we have here, meetings, town halls, and maybe it falls under meetings, and design charrettes and presentations, one of the things that I think is helpful is focus groups. So if we bring scientific focus groups, many people don't know this, but I got my undergraduate degree in marketing. Scientific focus groups that take cross sections of the community and really analyze what people say when they're just talking to one another, and in a controlled environment in the sense that they feel free to express themselves. I think that would be a helpful thing to put in the RFP. And this is a once in a, I don't know, in terms of the city, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, this is a site there's nothing like it in the city of Costa Mesa. There never will be anything like it ever again. It's a blank slate, and we have to be very careful about what we put there, and we have to absolutely be very careful that we take everybody's input into account, and the people that make the decisions about what goes there carefully and thoughtfully consider that, and we don't do anything that is, we don't do anything before we've kind of measured twice and cut once on this, because we will never get a chance again like we have here. So thank you for your work, and it's wonderful to be at the place we're in right now. Call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, we don't have anything else on the agenda. Do any council members want to express anything? Okay. So in that case, we'll adjourn. You got something, council member? No. Well, so we're going to adjourn the meeting. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. So we're going to adjourn the meeting in honor and memory of Lieutenant Jerry Helderman, who was taken for us far too young and far too soon, and his funeral, as they said, is in Riverside on October 12th. And if you need the information about that, let us know. We're adjourned.